Start. Okay, make sure I click the got it as well. Okay, another round of official welcome to How to Get Noticed Resume and LinkedIn Workshop, brought to you by FASS and also SASS. Thank you again on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. I was going to say it's a Tuesday or Wednesday. Beautiful Tuesday afternoon. So big welcome for all of you who are here and also on Zoom. Of all the things you can do today on a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of October, you choose to be here. So my hope is that you'll get something, on top of the free drink, get something out of this particular workshop. Before anything, I just wanted to take a little bit of time to acknowledge that at SFU, we respectfully acknowledge the unceded and stolen traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, Squamish, and Musqueam nations on which SFU Burnaby is located, which is where we are right now. Personally, I am an immigrant and an uninvited settler on this beautiful Turtle Island. And I'm grateful that 30 years ago, I have an opportunity to be here, and I continue to live and learn and play and now raise my own family in this land. A little bit of my family history and background is that we are fleeing away from an oppressive communist regime from Hong Kong. And I cannot underestimate how grateful I am to be here, knowing that many of my friends and families are under this very oppressive regime. So I just want to take this moment and invite all of you, whether you are virtually or in person, to think about the land that you're on right now and your relationship with this land. And as an educator in a post-secondary setting, I definitely wanted to strive towards following the recommendations that are set forth by the Truth and Reconciliation Report. So so I just want to take this time to invite all of us to think about our relationship with the land. Hello and welcome. My name is Albert Fang. I am a career education manager. My focus is to support the fine folks at Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, which is all of you, and privilege, I guess, to be here with you. And I know that there are a handful of you online and in person. I know that we might not be able to sort of see each other, in total, but I hope that throughout the day we'll have a chance to connect. I'm going to talk a little bit about I'm going to talk about it later. So I'm just going to say we'll have a chance to connect and engage. So just happy to be with you today. I guess, just a little bit of a disclaimer, right? Especially we talk about, LinkedIn and resume today. My own mind, it is evolving big time, right? And as I'm preparing for this workshop, things about LinkedIn that was relevant, that we actually share with students in workshop even 2 years ago. Now I look back, I'm like, I need some newer stuff because it's not as applicable. So part of the fun is that, we're all learners of LinkedIn. We're all learners in this sort of evolving technology, but not necessarily just the tool, but evolving sort of landscape of how employers hire, how recruiters recruit. And the way I look at it also is that when it comes to LinkedIn, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a long-term project. You might already started off, with where you're at. Maybe you pick up a few things or two, right? And every day, hopefully that, as the platform evolve, your profile, your resume also evolve together. So it's a long-term project. It doesn't have to be perfect today or tomorrow. So as a result, we can start with baby steps, small tips. Again, I was hoping to negotiate for like a 5-hour workshop because I have so much to share. Obviously nobody wants a 5-hour workshop. So I'm like, okay, I want to start with something that's perhaps you might find it most useful. So as a result, I'm going to do a 5 and 5, right? We have about an hour together. Part 1, I want to do 5 tips to level up your resume, right? I won't be surprised if some of you are like, oh, I already got a couple of this, right? So hopefully some of that will get you thinking about leveling up your resume. And then part 2, I'm going to do 5 tips to boost your LinkedIn profile, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, why bother boosting your profile, right? I'm going to give a little bit of context. And in between that, I sandwich things with these sort of ask me anything rounds, right? If you've been to some of my workshops before, you probably get the idea that, as much as I wanted to have a lot of content to share with you, I think I'm more concerned about questions that you have. Questions, thoughts you have, or maybe even ideas or things that you've tried. So what we want to do is sandwich between all these content that I'm trying to deliver. I wanted to give everybody plenty of time to ask questions, and I'm going to talk about that, how we do that. But at the very end, we are going to end at around 4:30 officially, but I'm going to stick around, in person and also virtually. If Brian, you're willing to do that together with me, and just to answer any questions if people have, we can hang out for a little bit. And I forgot, but can I invite a round of applause for Brian? We're tag teaming together. So in order to do this hybrid in person and Zoom, can't do it all by myself. So great. Thank you for you there, my buddy. Okay, perfect. So this is how we're going to do. I don't know if some of you have come in contact with Slido before. I feel like this is a great tool, especially allowing whether you are online or in person to participate, to chime in an anonymous fashion. So I'm going to be putting up some questions just momentarily. So if you have a device, whether it's laptop or phone, feel free to go to slido.com, use the hashtag FASS noticed with the D at the end, FASS notice. Or if it's easier for you, you can also use the QR code to scan. So one way or the other, feel free to join us. And there will be some polls throughout Slido throughout the day. But at the same time, there's also a Q&A section that you're always welcome to drop the Q&A question. So thank you so much for whoever who says hi. We will, so basically you'll give me a chance to see, who is asking questions. And the best part is if you like certain questions, you can upvote it, right? So that the questions will rise to the top of our screen. And then I will get to that either as I'm presenting, or we'll get to that as we go through the Ask Me Anything. Loving the kind of support that we're getting there. So keep that going, folks. Okay, so let's start with this question, just kind of see where we're at, right? Clearly you probably started on your resume, or you might even have a LinkedIn profile. I want to get a sense of, well, what gives you the most grief, right? What challenges you the most about resume or LinkedIn? So this is sort of the first question. I actually need to activate the poll. And then, so as you can see, this is not a word cloud, this is just a text. So feel free to put in a word or two or a phrase, things that perhaps challenge you, right? I won't be able to guarantee that I'll cover everything, but kind of get a sense of where you're at, right? Because I can imagine, you're very welcome. If you haven't, if you just started your LinkedIn account yesterday, right? Or I could also imagine there's someone in the room where I've been using LinkedIn for a few years. I'm not really, getting this part of it. So so what challenges you the most? So I wanted to, hopefully the folks on Zoom are able to see the share screen with all that is on. I'm just going to turn this off if it's annoying. So feel free to read that, job description, past experience. So these are the things that give you challenges. Great. Using numbers, percentage to show tangibility. That's a great comment. Like, I'm going to touch on that a little bit. What to include in a resume and how to format a resume. Yeah, absolutely. Job description. I don't know what this person's referring to, but I do have a tip about job description. So hopefully, hopefully that might answer some of your question, but if not, feel free to jot it in the Q&A. So
Marianne has one, writing a profile, especially with a career pivot.
Yeah.
Sketchy.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I see that on the chat too, Marianne. Yeah, I see that on the chat too, Mary. Oh, thank you. Yes. So so now we kind of outed you, Marianne, but it's all good. I assuming this profile you're referring to LinkedIn. So okay, right. Yeah, what to write in a LinkedIn profile. Yes, that's definitely in my content as well. Yeah, like this is great. Wow. Like, I think, this is what I'm hoping that, even though I'm the one standing in front of all of you, sharing content, but would love to have you chime in. I know is if you're in person, you can just speak, right? When the time comes. But if you are on Zoom, feel free to unmute or, feel free to put it in the chat or something like that. But I feel like there's a lot of wisdom and experience in the room that hopefully we can sort of channel that. And as a group, we can sort of learn together. All right, fabulous. So as I mentioned before, 5 tips to level up your resume. So the first thing is really interesting. The first tip is present yourself as the ideal candidate. A lot of times when I work with students, they say, hey, Albert, can you take a look at my resume to see if it's good enough or not? And I'm like, great, like this resume is awesome. But, do you know that what you're about to ask me is kind of like, if you're practicing archery, like, Hunger Games style, like shooting an arrow. And you ask me like, how's my archery skill? And I'm like, well, if you are trying to shoot the arrow towards the apple on top of Brian's head, then you probably are spot on. But if you are, trying to hit that tree behind him, then you're way off, right? So I think what we're trying to say here is that when it comes to how effective your resume and even your LinkedIn to that degree is, what are you aiming for? What are you targeted? So it's almost like, if you flip it around, it's almost like, if you want a certain company, organization, people who have certain type of opportunities to notice you, are you able to cater or are you able to identify what they're looking for, right? So allow me to do this a little bit of a silly illustration, this Lego head. So imagine every organization, every recruiter, they have a sort of ideal candidate in their mind, right? And then here we are, on the other side, us, right? Another Lego figurehead. I love Lego, so whenever I can sneak that in, I'll do that. So for every ideal candidate, they look for certain skill set, certain experience, personality, certification, values, et cetera, right? So it's almost like a checklist that a ideal candidate is looking for, right? And for us on the other end, we've got lots of skills, different experience, different personality, certification, value. We probably have lots that is, about us because we're a unique, complex person, right? So the idea is to say, okay, based on what they're looking for, how am I able to target and identify certain things about what I have that meets what they need, right? So it's sort of like this, how can I match what I have to what they need? So in some ways, this is so, I want to start this as the first tip. Not only for resume, but really for LinkedIn as well. It's so foundational in a sense that, even though, resume, you can do 2 pages. If you really need, you can go even further. But for LinkedIn, you can go on and on as well. But keep your audience in mind in terms of what they're looking for. And I can't say enough how important that is because, again, keeping your, by highlighting or curating information that is most relevant to what you're looking for, you're helping them to help you, you're helping them to see you as a qualified candidate. So I just wanted to sort of start off with this tip, present yourself as an ideal candidate. It's almost like shifting your mindset from, just telling everybody everything about what you have to what they're looking for, which leads to this, right? One person, in the first question answer, job description, right? So again, if we wanted to effectively target a particular job or present yourselves as an ideal candidate, you need to understand your job posting. You need to be able to deconstruct it. And what I mean by deconstruct is, are you able to sort of put on your detective hat and say, what are they like as an organization? What is this position that they are looking for? What are some of the most important qualifications? What are the skills and knowledge? What is it about the organizational culture, right? Are they very innovative? Are they very collaborative? Or are they very, try to carry a certain tradition? Does your personality match that? Is it a good fit for you, right? And what it comes down to also is keywords, right? I'm going to talk more about that when it comes to LinkedIn. It's all about keywords and make sure you pick that up. And again, just want to do a really quick example, right? This is, Ecom 911, dispatchers type of work. And, if you take any job posting, right, virtual or PDF or, PL, whatever, are you able to sort of highlight some of the keywords, right? I'm not going to read it out word for word, but are you able to pick up, again, the values this organization embrace, the skill set that they're looking for, right? Again, this goes back to the two Lego heads, right? This is in order to say how you're going to match that ideal candidate. This is just understanding, basically coming up with a list of what they're looking for. And this is sort of the section where they talk about qualifications, right? Some of the personality or characteristics that a candidate embrace, right? So again, regardless of whether you are whether you are applying for a specific position or maybe you're targeting a type of work, it's good to have some input to get a sense of maybe, okay, if I'm interested in being a data analyst, for example, right? Are you able to see multiple data analysis positions to kind of say, oh yeah, like these are the common words, these are the common skill set. So again, as you realize, the first two tip is before you even start your resume. So if you have a good mindset of being able to present yourself as an ideal candidate, and you do your intel background deconstructing job postings well, to me, that's 1/3 of the process, right? Because you understand your audience, you understand what they're looking for. So having that foundation when it comes to your resume and LinkedIn, super important. Okay, so I just want to go back here and see if I think we have a few Q&A. Oh, everything. Yeah, so keep your questions coming. In about 5-10 minutes, we'll go into the Ask Me Anything. So tip number 3, refine your bullet points. I know there are a couple of people who talk about presenting numbers and all that. So this is what this is about, right? When I'm talking about bullets, right, I'm talking about under experience section, how you talk about not just, what you've done in a particular job or particular volunteering opportunity. But if you think about a formula or recipe, I would consider this, right, is the skill that you use and the task that you're trying to accomplish. I know that the color isn't so well. So under skills, there's a word called verbs. So what did you do, right? The task is a noun, but more importantly, it's the outcome. So not just what you do, but what impact does it bring? So what is the impact, right? So just to give you an example, right? Many of us will describe part of our work, if you are a communicator or, or somebody involved in, in a communication role. I wrote monthly newsletter, right? But a better bullet would be wrote a concise grant proposal and gain funding for 3 student club projects, right? So you kind of talk about the result. I would even argue, if you know the amount of funding, right? Write a concise grant proposal and successfully receive $5,000 of funding for 3 student club projects, right? That's a concrete result, right? But I also get that in many situations, well, not everything is sort of quantified by a number, right? Let's say, for example, if you're in a customer service situation, it's not like every customer, oh, I give you 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 of how good you are. But you can always look at as what is the purpose or rationale behind what you do, right? So an example, the second bullet there is effectively assessed customer product and service needs to determine the best option and provide exceptional customer service, right? So it's not just talking to a person and listening, but assessing the service needs and determining the best options, right? And I just want to quickly, include something here is that I know that for a lot of us, it's not the resume format or the layout that bothers people the most, but really it sort of comes down to the bullet, right? Because part of it is, well, how do I come up with a result? Like, how do I come up with a rationale? A trick that seemed to have worked for me when I work with students is I ask them, well, clearly, like, you do a very good job in the work that you do in that role, because you just say, well, how do you do it? I'm like, well, I just do it, right? So sometimes I ask them this question, right? Okay, imagine this. Imagine if you need to train a new person to do your job, and clearly they're still in that learning curve and they're not very good at it, right? So if they were to serve this customer what could go wrong, right? Sort of flip the rationale around in that regard. So they might say, you know what? Oh, they might not let the customers know what their options are. I'm like, okay, that's very interesting. So I guess if you do it well, you're making sure that the customers are aware of the best options available, right? They're like, oh yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, right? So again, if you're in that situation where I'm not sure what the rationale is behind this, like, is there a rationale for everything that I do, right? Maybe, start thinking about what could go wrong, for another person, what could go wrong for somebody new, okay? So I just want to pause here for a little bit, and take a look at Q&A in case if folks have questions about bullets, because this is, again, this is one of the really, if you can imagine the building blocks of a resume, but also your LinkedIn, right? In your experience section, you're going to have these bullets. If you do these bullets right, if you're able to capture, say, the accomplishments, the rationale, I think it really gives off a very strong impression. Again, we're talking about getting noticed. Really give a strong impression on how you approach even a task seem to be as ordinary as providing customer service, right? It's not just what you do, but how you do it, what you have in mind as you do, and even something as seemingly ordinary can be extraordinary if you are able to frame it in a context that is relevant and impactful. Okay, so that's your tip number 3. You gotta work on and refine your bullets. Number 4, consider a resume makeover. I know this is a bit obvious. I know I'm pointing the obvious. But you'll be surprised, like even as on another hat, I hire co-op student to work together in our team, in our department. You'll be surprised, out of 10 resumes, I only get maybe 2 resumes that have color, and I'll see out of that 10 resume 3 or 4 that still sort of that format looks very much like the Microsoft template ones, right? And again, I get that graphics design isn't everybody's cup of tea. So that's why there are things like Canva, free account, resume templates. I'm also going to include a link. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention at the very beginning. If you have registered through Eventbrite, we have your email address on file, and I'm going to send you these slides afterwards. And some of these resources is actually an embedded link. So if you're like, oh, Albert, you mentioned like a resume gallery on the SFU, our learning community, like, where is that? Like, hopefully you can just click on the PDF slide and it'll get you there. So sorry, I forgot to mention that. I was just going to say, what was I going to say? Yeah, so something for you to think about is, think about your audience, right? Are they very sort of traditional type, sort of standard type of, like, I don't know, the banking industry, the finance industry? Or is this something like, again, if you apply for anything sort of like, graphics, creative industry, where it needs a little bit more color, right? In those two extremes, it's not just either all or nothing, right? In between, there's still some fairly standard and traditional layout in terms of formatting, but it brings a little bit of color, right? Even at the very least, think of your name, right? Your name, the font that you use, the color you put in, every little bit, you'll be surprised. Like, again, you're talking to the most, inept artistic person here, right? So, so that's why I'm not even trying to create something new for me. Like, I go to Canva, I'm like, oh, this looks kind of nice, right? So I'll tell you this silly metaphor. The way I look at this is, it's almost like fashion, right? I do not claim to be somebody, who knows how to dress sharp or whatever, right? But I do observe, right? So again, this is a true story. I look at Brian, I'm like, wow, like, I love the shirts that he wears. But I'm like, okay, but here's the thing though, right? If I wear the exact same shirt that he wears, it doesn't mean that'll look good on me, right? So part of it is like, okay, like, I kind of like that, but maybe the style doesn't fit me, but there's something I can take from him, something I can take from another person, and then that become my style, right? So when you consider a makeover, it doesn't have to be like, okay, I just want to be like that person. But when you look at these resume template, look for the different ones to see, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of this, but I like this formatting, and I'm going to add this to mine, and then it becomes your own style, right? So that sort of, again, this is where sort of the fashion metaphor ends, is that, like, you can create your own style without starting from scratch, right? So, so consider checking out. The more that you see, the more you realize, okay, I like this, I don't like this, this might work for me, this doesn't work for me. So check out some of these templates. Last but not least, this is my favorite one. Beat out the resume reading robot. Like there isn't a word like that. I just say it just to, sort of in a more sort of sarcastic way. But in reality, right, put up your hand, I guess, even for those on Zoom, put up a thumbs up. If you have applied to jobs where you're not emailing directly to a person, you are submitting an application online. Put up your hand. Right. So so for those who are online, you can do a thumbs up. Thank you, Mackenzie. Thank you, Jitashi. So you probably, I don't know if anyone knows what's happening behind the scenes, right? Like again, every system is different, but generally they're called applicant tracking systems, right? Because the human being cannot read 100 resumes or 150 resumes. So not only the system helps curate applications, but they also filter applications. So that, again, depending on how the system works, sometimes the system will rank them, sometimes the system will filter them. But the idea is that the human being behind the system will be like, instead of reading 200 applicants, they'll read 5, 10, 20, according to what the systems. So this is where it gets really interesting, right? Sometimes the most heartbreaking thing to hear is that I uploaded my resume. Did a human being actually see it, right? Or did it just sort of go to this black hole of resume reading robot, right? Like there's no bigger heartbreaking thing than that. I know I'm speaking in exaggerating terms. There are actually a lot of things, but so here's the idea, right? How do you beat them at their own game, right? So part of it is, without getting too specific on the algorithm that I can even explain, it really comes down to certain keywords, right? If you don't understand algorithm or anything like that, you can understand Google, right? Whenever you Google things, is keywords that matter, right? If you put in a certain specific keywords, if you get the keywords right, guess what? The right stuff start coming up. And it's actually not, a very similar idea when it comes to these applicant tracking system. So remember tip number 1 and tip number 2, ideal candidate, break down or deconstruct the job posting. If you do those two things well, which means your resume will have some keywords about the posting that you're applying for. Will have some keywords that align with their, company values, right? And guess what? When you do that well, it allows your resume or applications to rise up sort of to the top, right? Because there is a lot of keywords match. And you probably wonder, well, how do I ever find out if if I'm doing well? Well, I'm going to embed a link here. There's actually a service called JobScan. It's actually a for-fee service, but it's actually, but if you sign up for a free account, you get 5 scans. So I wish I get commission, but I don't. But, however many free accounts you sign up, it's not my business, but you get free 5 scans. So how it works is that you can copy and paste the job posting, and you can copy and paste your own resume. And then it will simulate that same process that the ATS would do, is to say, is it a high percentage match or is it a low percentage match, right? So you have a chance to sort of play around with your resume, and in this case, sort of LinkedIn profile is also sort of the same idea, right? You can copy and paste your LinkedIn profile content in JobScan to see how well they match, right? So it allows you to sort of just maneuver and adjust and customize to see, okay, if you started with 30%, don't be discouraged, work on it, look at the keywords and everything and see when you go back and scan it again, does it go a bit higher, right? So these are the things you want to keep in mind, because again, the resume reading robot would not tell you, say, Albert, this is such a poor fit, no human being will ever read your resume. It just goes into this dark hole, black hole of nothingness, right? So using JobScan hopefully will kind of help you a little bit on that. All right, so this, a quick few tips after I explain that, right? Because ATS mostly sort of scan the text, so you wanted to sort of make sure that, the job titles and the standard headings matters, so that so that it recognizes some of those words. Because I know even for the word customer service, there are like a million different ways of saying it, like customer experience magician. I'm going to make something up, but I have heard something along the line before. So just in case if those things, not every system picks that up, go back to some more sort of traditional job titles. It might get better recognition. Place contact info on both pages and not in header or footer. No columns or tables. I think what I'm trying to say is keep the formatting simple, just in case if it trips up, the sort of the algorithm as it reading your text. Use keywords. I kind of said that a few times. Use simple fonts. So again, you might have a resume that is sort of nicely formatted. We're just talking about templates that for human beings' eyes to see, but when you submit certain, resume online, that this is a system that picks it up. You might want to keep it a little bit more simple, just so that the text will pick it up. And obviously read the instructions. I know I'm pointing the obvious. Some systems want you to put in PDF. Some systems want you to do a MS sort of Microsoft document type of file. Make sure you follow their instructions, right? Again, the reason why I keep beating that same old drum is that, if you don't do it wrong, nobody is going to tell you, yeah, Albert, you messed up something different. Nobody see your resume. It just goes into this black hole, right? Fabulous. Okay, which is bringing us to this first round of Ask Me Anything. So again, I kind of highlighted the 5 tips, right? Just to recap, we talk about, being the ideal candidate. We talk about deconstructing the job postings, do better bullets, consider a makeover, and also last but not least, beat the robot reading, resume reading robot at its game. So I just want to go back to Q&A. So again, if you want to anonymously drop your questions, feel free to do that on the Slido. But if you just wanted to save your fingers from typing, you can also just raise your hand. So or not even raise your hand, just speak. Yeah, go ahead.
So in some job postings, apart from the resume, they make you do certain questionnaires or something if like that's their requirement. So in those cases, what should we focus on? Should we focus on the resume, or is it more based on the questionnaire and the resume is just there to support the application?
That's a great question. Yeah. So basically, okay, make sure I hear your question correctly. So when you actually do an online job application, on top of uploading your resume, they also ask you specific questions.
Yeah.
So your question essentially is, should we focus on resume or should you focus on the answer?
Or both.
Or both, yeah. I just want to clarify, when it comes to sort of those additional questions that they ask, are they sort of related to your skills, experience, or related to sort of something else?
I mean, I think it really depends on the job. And
yeah, I know.
Well, what kind of person they want. So they could be asking for skills or
personality,
experience, like specifically, but they ask generic questions like, have you worked in let's say customer sales or whatever?
Right. Yeah.
They have like generic questions sometimes, but sometimes they can be specific. So
I hear you.
Like,
I hear you.
That.
Yeah. Very good question. Yeah, I don't know if folks, in the room or on the Zoom room, experience something like that, right? Where they're asking about the resume and they are asking additional question. My personal educated guess is that, they are making the assumption that not everybody will include the most relevant things in the resume, right? So instead of, so in order to find ways to sort of filter down the gazillion applicants, they are probably asking questions that are relevant to the requirements. So, right? So this goes back to, are you able to sort of deconstruct what they want, right? So I would imagine is that, to sort of giving you sort of a general answer is that obviously they're both important. Your resume is important, and then answering those questions are important because chances are the questions that they're asking has everything to do with what they're looking for in a candidate. Meaning that from your perspective, if you do your resume really well, it might feel like you're just repeating what you said in the resume, right? But I would imagine, if you're doing that, if you feel like you're repeating something that you're already done in your resume, that means you're on the right track because you know exactly what they're looking for. So again, highlighting relevant experience, highlighting transferable skills, right? This is another big part. And thank you. I just see somebody who so not directly related. I'm going to get to that in a second. So yeah, so making sure that when you're answering those questions, you think about what is it that they're looking for, right? If they're asking, again, this is, I know I kind of went off a tangent here, but imagine if they ask you, how do you describe your personality, right? So do you just talk about it in general, or you think about, oh yeah, this is a company culture that really strive about collaboration or really strive about diversity, right? Do you agree with that? Is there part of you that really align with that? So you want to focus on that aspect of you instead of just talking about in general, in terms of your personality, right? Does that kind of answer your question? Yeah, that's actually a great question because again, right, we talk about the evolving nature of hiring. Like, today we see stuff like that, in the future, we might see something different. But bottom line is that no matter what systems they use, goes back to think about what is their ideal candidate? What are they looking for? How am I able to align what I have and who I am with what they're looking for? So love this quick tip. So I'm going to read this out loud. When you finish writing your resume, export it as a PDF, then copy and paste it into another document. This lets you know if the formatting won't break. Oh, I love this one. Yes, absolutely. Right? Because sometimes, if the PDF is done right, when you copy and paste it, you retains all the text. But sometimes if it's not done very well, like I guess depending on what software you use, it just becomes a whole bunch of, mumbo jumbo, and who knows, right? The system might not work really well. So great tip, love it. So when it comes to resume, any questions, feel free to, throw your anonymous question in on Slido, hashtag FASS noticed. So anyone want to chime in the room? Anything you wanted to jump on? Yeah, please.
Most additional question I've seen that almost like a treatment for the cover letter. They always ask why you want this position.
Yeah. Is that just a comment or do you have a question to go with that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point, right? It's, so basically the comment in the room was, and your name? Sorry, I didn't get a chance. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to make you choke. Hugh? Yeah, so he was saying, well, sometimes he even got questions that are almost similar to cover letter, right? Like, what is it about this job and why are you interested, right? So again, right, this is really almost kind of like, they expect that you don't include that in your cover letter or you don't write that in your resume. So they want to specifically want to know. In some ways, you can almost treat it as sort of like what do you call that? Sort of filtering interview, sort of like a really short telephone interview or like 5 minutes just to see if you're in the ballpark, right? Like they're also looking at those questions as well. Like my hope is that some of these systems are not strictly relying on the keyword match, right? Because a lot of candidates, they might be great people, have great skills, but sometimes just sort of filter through the crack, so having some questions like that also allow you to shine, right? You know what I mean? Also, but who knows, right? If they have 100 answers, they might still have to use the algorithm to filter out, some of the answers that, guess what, matches the keyword, right? So, okay, excellent. So, I didn't even get a chance to expand this in the beginning, but the reason why I want to tie resume and LinkedIn together is that as you will see me talking about this, there are a lot of similarities, right? In some ways, LinkedIn, it started off with sort of like the resume of the future, now it's just resume of the present or resume of the pandemic. But what is really interesting is that the more I looked into, in terms of looking at how we can craft our LinkedIn profile or how we can improve our LinkedIn profile, I see that a lot of the concepts are very much related to how we do resume, right? So it goes back to the idea that you need to present yourself as an ideal candidate, not necessarily just for that position, but for that type of position or for that type of industry, right? So let's say you're very interested in, the logistics, sector, right? You might see different roles, right? You might be open to several different roles, right? But how do you customize or target your LinkedIn profile and your resume, right, to match those type of work, right? So I see a lot of parallels. So that's why I feel like it makes a lot of sense to have LinkedIn and resume together. And for those of you who read my email that I sent out yesterday, you might have seen this stat. This research was actually done in early pandemic year 2020. LinkedIn just basically do a poll or survey on some of these HR professionals. 81% said that they agree that virtual recruiting will continue post-COVID. 70% says virtual recruiting will become the new standard, right? To give you a little bit of an example closer to home, we, at SFU, we used to organize in-person career fair where we take over the AQ for a couple of days, where in between classes, you're no longer able to walk through, the hallway because there are all these organizations coming. To give you, a perspective, right? The most we can fit in AQ is about 100 organizations, right? Like even if we pack every single corner, 100. Since the pandemic, since we shift everything to virtual, guess what? We are 200 in the 200 range, right? Think of yourself as a recruiter, right? Most of them are local, but they might be coming from Alberta, Ontario, right? So when they're doing a virtual fair, doing virtual recruiting, guess what? They're doing this at the comfort of their office if it's virtual versus, they have to pack, they have to hop on the plane, they have to fly over, they have to stay in a hotel, they have to come all the way up to Burnaby Mountain. Although, I do want to say that there is a little bit of trend of sort of trending back to want to be in person. I definitely see that, don't get me wrong. But I would say in terms of general, it's almost like this workshop, hybrid, right? You have a very strong virtual component, but when appropriate, also have the in-person component. So, and again, I know that I'm probably sort of preaching to the choir in that I don't need to convince anyone that virtual, applying jobs virtually, interviewing virtually, it's sort of, started to see more and more. I just want to acknowledge that a lot of this information about LinkedIn, I'm still learning, right? Learners of LinkedIn. This is a book that's recently published. It just came out a couple months ago. I base a lot of my thoughts and ideas from these couple of people, Omar and Jeremy. They used to work for LinkedIn and now they're educators. So I based on a lot on their information. I think it just came out a couple months ago. Like totally sounded like a plug, but I will be sharing with you a free resource later on that also taps into the expertise. So this is sort of like my reference section. So 5 tips. Tip number 1, profile photo that connects, right? So if you're looking at, a profile photo, right? And, again, this is, different than, your profile photo in other social media contexts, but people love faces, right? So especially on LinkedIn where, we're closely focused on the upper body, but also above your shoulder. So crop yours around your head and shoulder. People love smiles. So, make sure you have a genuine smile, and people love people like themselves, meaning that if there's a particular industry dress code, right? Again, the stereotypical example, applying for a bank, suit and tie, right? Where something a little bit different, something a little bit more casual, right? So adjust according to it. These days, there's also the photo background. So if you're in LinkedIn, there's your headshot, and then there's a background photo. Feel free to also choose something that either has a functional interest or geographic interest, right? Like, related to the field that you're applying for. Tip number 2, headline that gets attention. So this, if I have a chance, even though like I'm doing it almost sort of like the order that it shows up on the LinkedIn profile, but headline is actually the most important part of the profile, right? Again, according to Garriott and Scheifling, they understand that the algorithm actually prioritize this section over other section. So meaning that, and I'm talking about headline where it means like that 2 sentences right underneath your photo, right? So if you are hoping to work in a certain capacity or job titles, right? Or if you are, or if you are interested in working in a particular area or even geographical area, you wanted to highlight that because the algorithm scanned that section for keywords, more so than the other. And you can imagine the reason why I keep, going back to sort of algorithm and search, again, because on the other end of this process are recruiters looking for amazing, smart, graduate, soon to be graduates or new graduates, with relevant skills and experience. So in order for them to find you, they are pulling this search, right? So again, how the search work is, is how well the keywords matches. So the idea is that if you have a headline that match what they're looking for, theoretically or algorithmically, it will help you have better search results from their end. So tip number 3, if there's second thing that is most important after the, after a headline is the about section, right? It's having an about section that summarizes you well. In some ways, your headline has very, very limited characters. The about sections give you a little bit more, right? So it's sort of like the first impression, a sentences on who you are and what you're looking for. If I want to translate it to a resume context, this is almost like your summary of qualifications or your profile section, right? It allows you to highlight the most important or most relevant experience, highlight the most amazing accomplishments, some of your specialties. And I know that and I know that they also recommend to throw in an email address. And you'll probably wonder, well, why email address? Aren't you already on LinkedIn? Well, this is the way I understand it, is that in order for the link for a recruiter to contact you on LinkedIn, every person that they connect, it goes into sort of, because recruiters, they have to pay for a recruiter account in order to find candidates. So for some of them to contact you via LinkedIn, it costs them some money, in all reality is. So what some people have done is that, when an email address is included, guess what? They can just email you directly without going through the LinkedIn platform. So this is another one of those, like, well, wow, I didn't know about this kind of tip. So I kind of include that in there, just so that it gives one more reason to make life easier for the recruiter to contact you, because it doesn't cost them on LinkedIn because you included the email address in the about section. All right. So tip number 4, experience that impresses others. Again, this goes back to, what you have on your resume, right? Again, if you're relatively new to LinkedIn, don't feel like you need to start from scratch. A lot of stuff on your resume, copy and paste it over, like that's a start. Like, I know I'm pointing out the obvious. And go back to tip number 4 or tip number 3 in the resume section. How can I have more impactful bullets, right? Including the rationale, including the results. And here's another big thing I want to say, add media. So LinkedIn, this is still relatively new, but you know that in a resume, it's all text-based, right? But what is so great about LinkedIn right now is that under the experience section, you can add media. Meaning that if you've done a fabulous project and you have some pictures of it, you can include that. Maybe it's a really well done report or paper that you feel like, okay, that's actually a great example of my work, or I got A+ in this paper, or I did this project in my part-time work or co-op. You can include that. So this is almost the equivalent of you go to the interview and they ask you for, can you show me some examples of your work? And you're like, okay, check out this, check out this portfolio of mine, right? And I cannot say enough about how powerful this is, because show is always better than tell, right? If you have just organized an event that involved 200 people, instead of just putting that number in, give them a picture of a room full of people, right? I guess in pandemic it's kind of tricky, or also have, trigger other emotions, but let's just say, it gives a sense of, it gives a sense to the reader, the work that you're in, right? So add media when you can. And last but not least, recommendations that validate. I know that in LinkedIn, there is a skill endorsement section. Apparently, if you have a suspicion of whether it works or not, again, according to these two guys who used to work for LinkedIn, and actually the algorithm doesn't pay much attention to that. But recommendations is a completely different game, right? What recommendations do is that it sort of add more of an authentic and personal approach to validate your experience, right? So if if a manager or ex-manager, ex-supervisor is able to highlight, how great of a team person you are, or how amazing you are to work with, or how much they can count on you because you're so responsible, it adds so much more sort of human, sort of not necessarily a human face, but sort of like this human touch to this whole LinkedIn profile that could be seemingly just, facts, right? But when it comes to recommendations, it's quality more than quantity, right? Unlike the skill section, like anybody can offer you, oh, you're great at doing X or Y, and then there's 100 friends who says you can do it. It's about quality. It's about how well it's written. So again, if you have somebody who is in the position to give you a recommendation, ask that, right? Again, at this point of your journey, you might just have, you know, one or two, you know, supervisor or manager, right? But think about down the road, again, talking about LinkedIn as a long game, right? Imagine one of these days you'll be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years in your career, but people you've met along the way and the recommendations that they can give you stays on your LinkedIn profile, right? So I think that's what's so great about recommendations, because it adds so much more sort of that human touch that validates who you are and what you can and what you bring to an organization. So again, if it's up to me, I want to include 50 tips, but we will be here till 8 o'clock. So I want to highlight a few additional resources if you're interested. There's something called the LinkedIn Career Explorer. I know we're not necessarily talking about career exploration, but what this is helpful when it comes to drafting your LinkedIn profile is that this LinkedIn Career Explorer allows you to see the skills that are associated with a particular job title. So if there's a particular job title that you're interested, you know, if I have a little bit of time, I will go over that, but I just want to highlight that. Check this out. There's an embedded link. This online masterclass, as an SFU student, you can sign up free for this course. The embedded link is here. So this is created by these two people who, you know, who wrote the book. So you don't have to buy the book because this course is free. And, you know, and there's, you know, and it breaks it down to a lot of sort of micro lessons, short videos that you might find it helpful in terms of, you know, using LinkedIn as job search. So you'll see, you know, what I've shared with you is fairly high level. What you'll find in this online masterclass is some more details. LinkedIn Learning, I don't know if you knew about this, but you know, for all the money that you pay Netflix and Disney Plus, LinkedIn Learning is free only if you are SFU students. So you can sign up for a free account on the SFU library. And I just did a quick search last week on LinkedIn and networking. You know, there are only about 150 plus courses on LinkedIn Learning. It's a great library of you know, not just learning LinkedIn, but just learning everything from, you know, French cuisine to, you know, coding XML to, I don't know, leadership skills. So I definitely, and I really like the way that, you know, LinkedIn Learning, it's not like, you know, you have 10 episodes of like 5 hours each or whatever. Like they break it down to like 3-minute video, 2-minute video. So if you're like, you have a few minutes, you're waiting for the bus, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to watch one of the short videos. I personally recommend one of those that called Learning LinkedIn for Students. It's actually very, very good, better than what I can do in an hour. So check that out. And I also want to acknowledge that this particular workshop is eligible for this program called Career Changemaker Program. So this is a program that if you complete the requirement, you will receive a co-curricular record. So the link is here, but the idea is that you're learning strategies and ideas about job search and about other things. So this program, you know, there are some workshop that is eligible, some workshops that you attended that is eligible. And then if you do that and also attend the West Coast Virtual Fair, that means you're career ready. So so how it works is that if you complete some of the things that that is outlined in this program, you will receive a credit on the co-curricular record. And this West Coast Virtual Fair that is coming up on November 2nd and 3rd, like I was mentioning, there are over 200 organizations that are attending. And, you know, whether you are close to graduate or not, I always remind students that this is a great opportunity to check out what are the opportunities out there, right? Even if you're 1 or 2 years away from graduation, maybe there are some organizations that fascinate you, or maybe you're at a juncture where I don't really know what my options are, right? So the platform, you know, you can register, you know, to get access to this particular platform. You know, the platform is going to open next week on Wednesday. And then how it works is that once you enter in the platform, you will actually see 200 organizations. They have the virtual booths. Do I have a snapshot here? No, I don't. They will have virtual booths, and you can get a sense of what are the organizations who are coming, who are they recruiting for, what type of skill set they're looking for. And the idea is that you can book 15-minute appointments with employers and recruiters on November 2nd and 3rd, and you can meet with them to have that conversations. I know part of this could be super, super intimidating. So as a result, next Tuesday, right here at 3:30, I'll be doing another workshop on interview and networking. And I'm going to squeeze in a demo for this particular fair as well. So if you're like, I'm kind of interested, but I'm like, okay, this is intimidating, come back. And again, Brian and I will try to do this amazing hybrid style as well. So if you can't make it on the campus, just register. We'll send you a Zoom link and you can join us next week, same time, and learn a little bit more about the fair. And I'll do a quick demo as well. All right. So let's see. Before I go to questions, again, asking the room again on Slido. Again, I included 5 tips about resume and 5 tips about LinkedIn and a whole bunch of other things that are around the tangent. What is one thing you want to try in the near future, right? I don't expect all 10 tips are going to land, but if there's 1 or 2 that you're like, wow, let me think about that, right? Even some of the additional resources. And I'm gonna, so feel free to include that anonymously. And just so that we have an idea of what are some of the things that you want to try in the near future. And in the meantime, I'm going to quickly answer a few more questions. We'll do more Q&A after this officially ends. What does co-curricular do? So could a co-curricular record, great question, by the way, is that it's supposed to work as a parallel document to your academic transcript. So everybody knows about the academic transcript. It takes, it keeps track of all the courses that you've taken for credit. Co-curricular record are things like volunteer, or you've participated in leadership program, or any personal and professional development program, such as this workshop and such as the fair. So it basically sort of outlined nicely, and it is an official document from SFU that you can access. And I'm gonna, thank you for asking that question, because I'll throw in an extra link about co-curricular record in the slide so you can read about it. Because if you didn't know that it exists, hey, maybe this is something that you've just learned from this particular workshop. So going back to the poll. Let's see, show post. There we go. Thank you. One thing I want to try in the near future, get a job that makes me happy. Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely want you to do that. LinkedIn Masterclass, use Canva to make a new resume. Okay, fabulous. So I know a lot of you, even though you did not put it in the Slido, I'm sure, you're thinking about something. The idea is that going back to the first few things that I say, start with baby steps, right? You don't have to create a LinkedIn profile that will, I don't know, that will shake the universe, right? But baby steps, maybe work on those bullet points, work on, have a nicer profile picture, or really work on that about section, all that will go a long, long way. So let's go back to the Q&A. So actually there's so much more. Sorry, I just realized I missed all of that. Let's see. Okay. Quick tip. Oh, no, sorry, I didn't miss anything. It's all good. It's all good. So, can you show how to get through the SFU library? Do you mean the SFU library specifically for for LinkedIn Learning? Because I think you might be, so I have a link embedded here. So in the slide, if you click on the link, you will, actually it didn't show up that. Let me see, copy, come on. Okay. Let me show you that. So basically, once you click on the link, you will be able to see, you will be able to get to this SFU library page where you can just sign up for the LinkedIn Learning account. There it is. Boom. Wrong one. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so once you click on the link, you'll see this, and you just create an account on LinkedIn Learning, and then you'll have access to that. Rather than paying LinkedIn Learning, I don't know, $15 per month or something like that. It is expensive, so do take advantage of that. Even if you just want to use it for, like, I don't know, learning French cooking, or whatever, right? Okay, so what's the purpose of LinkedIn and why is it necessary? Okay, so it's 4:30. I just want to say a big thank you for everyone on the Zoom room, also in person. I'm going to hang around as long as there's questions still coming up, or if you want to sort of privately chat, let me know. Brian, if you don't mind keeping an eye on the Zoom room, if any folks wanted to chat personally, like I have Zoom right in front of me, so I can also chat with you there, or you can including a comment. But all the best with your LinkedIn and resume, LinkedIn profile and resume. Again, next week, same time, we'll be doing an interview and networking along with the demo on the virtual fair. So if you're interested, come by. And I forgot, Brian, this workshop is being recorded. So if you have a friend who wanted to take part of this and they missed it, how do we get access to the recording?
Email us. You've got both our emails.
Perfect. Okay, yeah. So if you register, we'll send you the link, and then and then we'll get that workshop up and running. So if you have a friend who wanted to make it and missed it, they can check out. And again, I'll have the slides.
We'll do a private YouTube send out.
Perfect. So thank you, Brian and his team. So again, on behalf of FASS and SASS, thank you again for coming. Just want to say a big thank you. All the best with the rest of your day and rest of your week. And maybe we'll see you next week. Okay. Yeah. Let me just go back to this question. So feel free to leave if you want, and you can, and you can hang around. What's the purpose of LinkedIn and why is it necessary? Yeah, like this is a great question. I think I go back to just, virtual recruiting become a bigger part, because from the recruiter's perspective, virtual recruiting is more effective, saves time and energy. So I think part of the idea is that, and this is my argument as well, right? When you have a resume, you have to send somebody the resume, right? I know I'm pointing out the obvious, like they don't even know you exist unless you apply for the job. Good to see you, man. And you have to give the resume to that person, right? LinkedIn, in a different way, is you allow yourself to be seen, to be found, to be searchable, on LinkedIn, right? So I think part of that is sort of shifting that paradigm of recruitment, so that even though you're not sure what employers might be interested in you, the employers can find you in that regard, right? But I know that in other contexts where I have this LinkedIn workshop, there are also students who share like, hey, I'm a pretty private person. This is a little creepy, do I really want to tell them, everything, right? So, and again, I can definitely share that sentiment, and my response would be, share as much as you're comfortable, right? Like I'll give an example. There might be some mature students, or there might be folks who are like, I don't want people to know when I graduated from high school, so that they can sort of know that I'm actually 45, or 44 or whatever, right? So in that case, for LinkedIn, let's say for your high school graduation or even your university graduation, you don't have to include a year, if you feel like that is sharing too much information, right? So again, is that your profile you have full control on your profile. How much or how little you want to share is completely up to you. So hopefully there's that little bit of a leeway as well. So yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question. Anonymous person, what's the purpose of LinkedIn and why is it necessary? Feel free to chime in. Follow-up question. Let me see if there's more coming. Yeah, I think that's the last one for now. Yeah, so again, I'll try to be a little bit more casual. I'll sit down. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to. Oh no, I cannot sit down because folks can't see me because I need to be in front of this. So
I don't know if there's any, maybe checking with
yeah, even folks on Zoom, if you have any questions. I know that this is an hour. I'm definitely going for the short and sweet. More so than, let me give you 5 hours worth of content. So that's why I check out the masterclass and LinkedIn as well. Yes, Brian.
Maybe I'll stop recording.
Oh, yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah.